The experience starts here before anyone ever opens an AI tool. This unit begins with the educator rather than the technology. Learners enter with professional knowledge, experience, and judgment that no tool can simply generate or replace. The larger purpose is to help educators recognize the difference between using AI as a thought partner and allowing it to become a thinking replacement. The design combines independent work with opportunities to think alongside other educators. Learners do much of the reading, practice, documentation, and reflection on their own, while selected moments ask them to compare decisions, challenge assumptions, and learn from one another. The real work begins here before learners are asked to do anything with AI. The wisdom wall asks them to identify what educators know from experience that AI cannot replace. I wanted professional knowledge on the first page because human judgment is not something learners discover after using the tool. It is what they bring to the tool in the first place. From there, I ask learners to tell me who they are, who they teach, what already works in their practice, what experience they have had with AI, and what access or professional constraints may shape their participation. These educators are not blank slates, so the design should not treat them like they are. How we work together makes the structure of the experience transparent. Some of the work happens independently, while selected moments ask educators to compare decisions, challenge assumptions, and learn from one another. What comes next gives learners a clear path forward so they can see where the experience is headed before they move into the content and activities. Together, these pieces make the expectations and the directions of the unit visible before learners begin the deeper work. From here, the human centered beginning becomes a set of learning outcomes and a structure for the work itself. The content page gives learners the ideas they need before asking them to put those ideas into practice. It is designed to be worked through in order, but the central idea stays consistent throughout. AI can contribute possibilities, language, and another perspective, but professional judgment remains with the educator. That distinction between a thought partner and a thinking replacement is what the rest of this page puts into practice. The protocol begins with set the table. Before the tool opens, learners establish what they are trying to accomplish and what information does not belong in the conversation. Move two is prompt, but prompting here is not treated as simply asking AI for something. Learners have to provide enough context, audience, purpose, criteria, and boundaries to make the conversation useful. Because prompting can become a stumbling point, support appears right where learners need it. Anatomy of a strong prompt breaks down the work into context, audience, purpose, criteria, and boundaries. A strong prompt here is built around five pieces: context, audience, purpose, criteria, and boundaries. Instead of treating prompting as a trick or formula, learners can see the decisions that shape what they are actually asking the tool to do. Put the pieces together shows what happens when those five elements work as one complete prompt. Learners can see the structure in an authentic example rather than trying to assemble the pieces in isolation. Before anything is sent, the checklist turns prompting back into a judgment call. Learners check the clarity of the request, the boundaries they have established, and whether anything private or inappropriate has slipped into the conversation. The goal is not a magic prompt. The prompt opens the conversation. The educator still decides where the conversation goes. Once the prompt is sent, the work does not stop. Move 3 asks learners to read what comes back and push against it. They are looking for what works, what does not work, what may be missing, and what needs to be questioned. Move 4 turns that critique into revision. Learners make deliberate changes based on their own goals, context, and professional knowledge rather than simply accepting what the tool produced. And Move 5 brings the decision back to the educator. Learners will make the final call and document what they have kept, what they have changed, what they have rejected, and why. Moves 2 through 4 may loop more than once, but the responsibility never moves. The educator remains accountable for the final decision. Access is built into the design rather than added on at the end. If a learner cannot use a live AI tool because of district policy, device limitations, cost, or another barrier, the thinking does not disappear. The transcript pathway gives learners another route through the same protocol while keeping the expectation on professional judgment. Right below that, 4 practical resources support the work: the process log template, a completed example, clear guidance about what never belongs in the tool, and the transcript pathway. Together, they give learners structure without doing the thinking for them. And 7 things AI can be widens the conversation beyond a simple yes or no of AI. The point is to help learners see the role a tool plays depends on how deliberately it is used and how much judgment the educator keeps in the process. For learners who want to push further, Go Deeper provides another layer of exploration without making the additional depth a barrier to moving forward. How this page was built also makes the design itself visible. The resources, examples, access pathways, and supports are placed where learners need them rather than separated from the work they are trying to do. And what comes next points learners forward. They have now moved from the core idea through the 5 move protocol into the supports that make the protocol usable. The next step is to put that thinking into practice. This is where the activities begin. The activities page is where the ideas from the protocol become visible in practice. Learners are not simply asked to use AI, they have to make decisions, defend those decisions, and show where their own judgment shaped the work. Learners begin by distinguishing between AI functioning as a thought partner and AI functioning as a thinking replacement. The important part is not simply where they place an example, the justification is the artifact. They have to explain where the thinking stayed human and where it might have been handed over. The case wall moves learners from making a choice to making their reasoning visible. In step 2, they sort examples based on whether AI is functioning as a thought partner or beginning to replace the thinking. Step 3 raises the stakes by asking them to defend that decision. A category by itself is not enough. Learners have to explain what evidence led them there and where they believe human judgment is still operating. Then the perspective flip deliberately unsettles that first answer. Learners reconsider the same situation from another point of view and ask whether a different context, role, or constraint changes the judgment they made. What they turn in captures the whole progression, not simply an answer, but the reasoning, defense, and reconsideration behind it. You know you did this well when makes the success criteria visible before learners move on. The goal is not simply to complete the activity, but to make the reasoning behind the judgment clear. Activity 2 moves learners from judging examples to putting the protocol to work on a real professional task from their own content. They begin by choosing authentic work that actually matters to them. Before opening a tool, they name their goal, their concern, and a boundary they will not cross, especially around privacy. Then they take the task through the protocol, prompting, reading and pushing back, revising with judgment, and making the final decision themselves. Just as important, they document the process so the record shows where the tool contributed and where the educator's thinking changed the direction of the work. What learners turn in makes the process visible: the professional artifact, the record of the protocol, and the evidence of their decisions made along the way. The success criteria reinforce the same expectation. Completing the steps is not enough. Learners need to show that they evaluated the AI output, made deliberate revisions, and kept the final judgment their own. Activity 3 pushes that work into a deeper revision cycle. Learners build or revise an educational artifact through repeated rounds of prompting, critique, and revision, documenting where their own judgment actually changed the direction of the work. The steps guide learners through that process, while the deliverable preserves the evidence of their decisions rather than showing only a polished final product. Activity 4, Revise Something Real, takes that thinking into an authentic piece of professional work. Learners choose something they actually care about improving and take it through at least 2 documented revision cycles. Between those cycles, there is a checkpoint with another person. The second set of eyes matters because revision is not just about generating another version. Learners have to consider feedback and carry that thinking on into the next pass. The final step asks them to name where their own judgment ruled, where they overrode the tool, rejected something it offered, or contributed something the tool could not have known. What they turn in preserves that trail: the original and revised artifact, the documented revision cycles, evidence of the checkpoint, and a reflection showing where human judgment shaped the final work. The success criteria bring the focus back to meaningful revision. Learners should be able to show that the artifact genuinely improved, that the changes between cycles were more than cosmetic, and that there was at least one moment when their own judgment overruled the tool. The reflection can also be written, recorded as audio, or submitted as a short video. The format can flex, but learners still have to point to the specific decisions that shaped their final work. By this point, learners have judged AI use, worked through the protocol, evaluated what the tool produced, and revised something real. What remains is to show what they can do with that thinking and what it means in their own professional setting. This is where assessment brings the pieces together. Assessment has actually been happening throughout the unit. Each activity produces real evidence of learning, the reasoning behind a judgment, the process log, the evaluation of AI output, and the revision work. Those are not warm ups for a final test, they are the assessment. This page then makes success explicit. Learners should be able to explain when AI is appropriate, distinguish support from replacement, use the protocol while protecting private information, evaluate what the tool produces, and show where their own professional judgment changed the work. They also have to make and defend a responsible final decision and ultimately show how that thinking transfers into their own educational setting. So, assessment here is less about getting an answer right and more about making professional judgment visible. This section makes the alignment visible. Each activity is tied directly to one of the unit objectives, distinguishing partnership from replacement, applying the protocol to real work, evaluating AI output through the four lenses, and revising through documented cycles with human judgment in charge. Nothing here is busy work. The activities themselves provide the evidence of learning. That leaves the final objective: transfer. The capstone asks learners to bring everything back to their own educational setting and decide what responsible AI use actually looks like with their people, their work, and their constraints. Rather than writing an essay about AI, they create something practical that they can actually use. Learners choose from a form that fits their actual role, whether that is a classroom pilot plan, a staff protocol, student guardrails, a family resource, a coaching tool, or something else that makes sense in their setting. Whatever form they choose, the artifact has to address the people affected, the professional problem, where AI may earn a place, where it should not be used, and the privacy, access, policy, or equity concerns that come with that decision. And it ends with one realistic next step that they could actually take. That is why this becomes the final word of assessment. The earlier activities ask what learners can do with AI. This one asks what they should do, where they are at, with the people they are responsible for. There is no universal answer waiting for them here. They have to make and defend the answer for their own setting. Before learners leave, the unit brings them back to where they started. They return to the wisdom wall and add to their original thinking about what educators know that AI cannot replace. That return matters because their answer now comes after working through the protocol, evaluating AI output, revising real work, and making decisions about responsible use. They are not answering the same question from the same place. Look back, ask learners to consider how their thinking has changed, where they may still be tempted to let AI replace rather than support their judgment, and what part of their professional work they are determined to keep fully human. Those answers are theirs to keep and return to even as the technology continues to change. Then on Monday pushes that reflection back into the real world. The question becomes very practical when learners return to their actual students, their actual work, and their actual constraints. What is one thing they will do differently because of this experience? The unit ends where it began. This was never really about the tools, it was about the educator standing in front of them and the judgment that educator chooses to keep. Not someday, Monday.